Thanks for listening. This is Brian Hurley from Business Performance Improvement. The podcast Lean Six Sigma Bursts are short lessons, comments, Q&A, and insights. If you have a question, send your question through the Anchor app, and we might feature you on a future episode. Or contact me at biz-pi.com. Today I wanted to talk about two main types of kaizen events. So I first want to talk about a few other events, and then I'll get into that detail. So this came up in a class I was teaching, and I thought it'd be a good episode for the podcast. So the first thing I like to start with is a project. Often in Six Sigma, we talk about a DMAIC project. And this is often a multi-month effort to transform an area, maybe improve a single metric in a process, like yield or reduce inventory or reduce cycle time or lead time of a process. And it's not just a one main improvement, but it could be a series of improvements to get that metric better than it was before. Within a project, there may be a series of activities that have to happen. And these can be put together really efficiently if you run them as kaizen events. And kaizen event is also called a kaikaku. A kaizen event is also called a kaikaku event, where you have multi-days of working and focusing on a specific area to transform that area into improved state. 5S events are often run in this format, where you have multiple days of going through all 5 steps and really transforming the area with a dedicated team who's working on it. And that might entail that they shut down their work area in order to do that. So here's a typical format for a kaizen event where the outcome is implementation of the solutions. I'll call it a working event. So there's a planning stage to get the right people together and to figure out what's the focus going to be and who needs to be there and when are we going to do this activity. Traditionally, it's been a 2 to 5 day session, depending on the complexity of the problem. We've been using half-day sessions, and that seems to work fairly well. So we might split it up into 3 or 4 half-day sessions or 6 or 7 half-day sessions. It's different than our traditional in-person events, but there are some pros and cons of doing it that way. In a working session, you would conduct the event. You would go through a little bit of baseline analysis and assessment of the process. You'd walk the process either in person or virtually. Then you'd get everyone together and you'd talk through ways to make it better. At least half of the time in that session you would be working on those improvements with the goal of completing 80% of the tasks by the end of the session. And then you can leave up to 20% of the remaining tasks that you can finish over the next couple of weeks. We usually like to put a 30-day limit on that so that people aren't trying to take on too big of a project or effort. So anything large like a database change, that might not be doable in a 30-day window. Or bringing in a new piece of equipment, probably not going to happen in that short time period. So it focuses the team on things that they can actually control and implement. In order to accelerate those improvements, we might do a kaizen blitz activity or a kaizen burst, or also called a point kaizen. These activities would be very targeted, and we might take the overall team and split them up into smaller teams, and then have them go off and work on something for an hour or two. And then to bring them back together and report on how they're progressing, share the updates with the other teams, make sure they're not going down the wrong path or running into other issues, and then split them back out again and do that a couple times in order to accelerate these improvements. These don't have to be just within a kaizen event. They can be done outside of that. But the idea is that it's very, very targeted to a specific area. So it might be go off and standardize the tools for that workstation. Or it might be rearrange the layout in this one area. Or it might be create a Kanban card system for this area. The other type of event that is run in the similar format of a multi-day session, we'll call it a planning event. This is where we'll do a more deep dive on the process mapping exercise, and we'll try to figure out what are we going to work on. So the outcome is not necessarily anything gets improved, but you come up with an action plan that you're going to roll out over the next couple months. Usually that one has a 90-day limit. So this could look like a value stream mapping event, where we spend time doing the current state map, the ideal state, and then a future state map. And then the gap between the future state and the current state becomes the action plan. And we'll look at all the actions that need to happen, we'll prioritize those, and come up with a list of things we can do in the next 3 months or 90 days. Within the 90 days, there may be one or two kaizen events that are conducted. And then those would be conducted where they're working sessions with the goal of implementing changes at the end of those sessions. And also we can do these planning events now virtually with half-day or full-day sessions spread out a little bit, so we don't have to do them consecutively and 8 hours at a time or more. In the planning session, we're looking at a future state of 6 to 12 months or even 18 months out into the future. And that's giving the teams a vision of where they're headed. And we look at the current state to see where are the problems at. And so this is a great approach when we're not really sure where we should be conducting our kaizen events. So we step back and we look at the big picture, the whole system, and assess and identify the areas that need the most improvement. So when you're trying to decide what type of event to do, if the team is very clear on where they want to make improvements, a kaizen working event might be the right approach, with a short assessment of the current state, a development of a series of actions, split the team up, do little kaizen blitz or burst events, and complete most of those actions during the week. If you're not sure where you want to tackle, if you're not sure where you want to make improvements, you could then do a planning event where you do a current state map. It doesn't have to be a value stream map, but it could be just a process map. And then you look at what does the future map look like? Where do we want to be in 6 or 12 or 18 months in the future? And then you come up with an action plan that needs to be implemented in the next 90 days. Of those action plans, there may be kaizen events and kaizen blitz activities below that as part of that plan. So those are the two main methods I use when trying to plan a lean event or kaizen event activity. I first want to know, is this going to be a planning where we come up with a 90-day action plan? Or is this going to be a working session where we have 80% of the actions completed within the time period and then maybe 20% are done in the next 30-day follow-up? I usually try to steer teams towards the kaizen working sessions so we can actually see results, but sometimes it's better to take a step back to figure out where should we really be focusing our efforts first. I'm including some links to a few videos that I'd like to share. The first one is a value stream mapping, which I'm calling a kaizen planning event. And this was done at the state of Washington. The second one is the famous Meals Per Hour, which is the video that Toyota put together with their work with the New York Food Bank. So they show part of what I would call a kaizen event, where they rearrange the workspace and put up a different conveyor system and the distribution of the boxes. But it's also part of a larger project. They said in the video is like 8 weeks long. So I'll call it a project with a kaizen event activities underneath there. And those are definitely working sessions where they're changing the work. The third one is Paul Akers, as he shows his work at a German facility where he was helping a woman take the time of her process from 45 seconds down to about 10 or 15 seconds. So I'll call that a kaizen blitz or point kaizen or kaizen burst activity. So check those videos out to get a feel for the different level and size of the events. If you have any questions, please reach out through the Anchor app. Want to better organize your work area or bring 5S methods into your organization? Check out the 5S guide from Creative Safety Supply. You also get 3 free bonuses. Bonus number 1, free 5S poster. Bonus number 2, free 5S PowerPoint. And bonus number 3, free 5S audit card. Go to lean6sigmaforgood.com/5S for the free downloads. They also provide floor tape markings, labels, signs, foam tool organizers, red tags, label printers, and other organization tools. Make sure you use code BPI at checkout to save 10%.